Hi again, everyone. Another week to talk about chuck wagon racing. No, there isn't any real chuck wagon racing taking place either in the Canadian Pro Association, the Western, or the World Pro Chuck Wagon Association. That, of course, because of the COVID-19 disease that has everybody concerned about where they are and who they're in contact with. And, of course, no large fan attractions taking place anywhere in North America at this point in time. However, we can still look back. If we had been running the chuck wagons, where would the WPCA be? Well, we'd be headed to High River for round number 4. We started in Grand Prairie last year. It was Luc Tournier winning that opening show in Grand Prairie known as the Stompede, and that is both a pro rodeo and the chuck wagon racing. Then they move on to Saskatoon at Prairieland Park, a relatively new tour stop for the World Pro Chuck Wagon Association, and the winner there was Chance Vegan from 2019. Well, then the third show would be the smallest of the tracks, a short half-mile track with only 3 wagons in each of the heats. So that means you have 12 heats each and every night, 4 nights of action. Weather kind of disrupted things, and we didn't even get through a complete one night of shows. They had to call the racing after heat number 8. However, when we got back to it, and by the final Sunday afternoon championship round, it was Kurt Bensmiller. Yes, you know that name. He did play hockey. As a matter of fact, he won the senior hockey tournament for Canada, which was known as the Allen Cup, and did that a couple of times in his career. He is also the son of the great Buddy Bensmiller. Buddy winning the Calgary Stampede a couple of times in his career back in 79 and 89. He's also an 8 times champion at Cheyenne's Frontier Days. Well, Kurt learned a lot from his dad, Buddy Bensmiller, and as a matter of fact, Buddy is still involved in chuck wagon racing as the track director and arena director at all of the sites or the venues on the WPCA Tour each year. Out of Dewberry, Alberta, Kurt Bensmiller comes through to win the first show of the 2019 season. That was Medicine Hat, and that would have been last weekend as we join you this week to kind of keep on top of what would have been in the world of chuck wagon action. By now, of course, they are all in High River and getting ready for what got rained out in 2013, and that's called the Guy Weedick Chuck Wagon Championships. Guy Weedick, now who is he? He happens to be the gentleman that came from Vaudeville in New York City to Western Canada, sat down in Southern Alberta in a place called Calgary, and liked it so well that he decided to put together some kind of a gathering of fans and some fireplaces and all kinds of things like that, bonfires and what have you. Well, that grew from 2012, or from 1912 rather, to be the Calgary Stampede. And by 1923, they were experimenting with what we're going to talk and look at over the next little while, and that's the world of chuck wagon racing. It started a little bit different as we give you some background on it. When it first started in 1923, they didn't have barrels to turn. They just went around an oval track. And then when they got back in front of the grandstand, as it were, they actually unloaded what was a stove in the back of the chuck wagon, and then got some twigs and leaves and logs, put it on, started a fire. And actually, you could be the first one back to what we'd call the finish line. But if you couldn't get your fire started, sometimes the guy coming in 3rd or 4th might get his fire going, and that's how they reined it all in. So the champion would be declared when the first sparks flew, as they say. Well, it's gone on to be very, very much a cultured sport. It's been refined a number of times. About 10 years ago, they recessed the basket at the back of the wagons, moving it up high enough so that nobody could step into it, including the horses. But they still have that basket at the back and a red rubber barrel that will collapse, but we call that the stove. And there are 2 outriders with each and every one of the chuck wagon outfits on the track, one to hold the leader, one to throw that stove. And when the season was all over, not only did Kurt Bensmiller from Dewberry, Alberta, win Medicine Hat, he went on to win the Strathmore Chuck Wagon Championships in the middle of the summer. That is the first long weekend in August. And he went on to win Century Downs, a brand new racetrack that hit the circuit last year. And he was, for the 4th time, declared the champion. So right after that race, we had a chance to talk with the 4 times Calgary Stampede, 4 times World Champion from Bensmiller, from Dewberry, Alberta. Here he is, Kurt Bensmiller. Congratulations, Kurt.
Yeah, thanks, Arnie. I appreciate it.
How neat was that? This is a new track, a new course, a new show, and you're the first-time winner. That will always be in the history books.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's a couple shows that I haven't won yet, so when you get after it right off the start, it makes it easier that you don't have to chase it as much because you kind of know how to get back here again next year.
How much more rewarding is it to win it this year when you didn't have the most comfortable start? As a matter of fact, took you all the way to Medicine Hat, our 3rd tour stop, before you actually called victory.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I missed Grand Prairie by 15/100ths, and that was a big dash there, so it was kind of disheartening, and less than a second out of Saskatoon, so to finally get one in Medicine Hat, it meant a lot, and then we just kind of battled it out the next couple of weeks, and then we started off good after the break with Strathmore, and we've been in the top since, so it feels great.
Did you feel with Vern Nolan on your tail, or you chasing him, just depending on which day you looked at the standings, this was going to be a good race, it was going to be fun to win?
For sure. I mean, Vern chased me all year last year, and he kept us honest, and you had no room for errors. And the same thing this year. Like, I mean, the last half of the year, we outrun on him at every weekend that we've been at, but just not enough to gain very many points. And he kept me honest again. And if we'd slipped up at all, there's no way we would have caught him. You know, I don't know if he had a penalty again this year. He's been driving good. He's got a lot of horsepower, so he's not an easy man to beat. So it's definitely very rewarding when you beat a guy like that.
You and your dad, Buddy Bensmiller, had a lot to do with making this happen. Even after they announced it, they still needed some supervision, some influence, some guidance. That has to be kind of neat when you look back on it and say, it's been a success this week.
For sure. I mean, they've been after Dad all year, you know, for the last couple of years, even when they started talking about racing here, so at Century Downs, and Buddy had a lot to do with the infield and the racetrack, and these guys here, you know, they got all the right equipment and the right people, so it makes it a lot easier for him. And I mean, I was just on the board, lucky enough to fill in for Mark a couple times when they were talking about Century Downs, so I mean, the hype of coming here to race has been since last fall for us, you know, especially the guys on the board that knew it was coming.
You're not the only one that wins races. Tell us a bit about your outriders and also the sponsors that have kept you going all season long, Kurt.
Well, this year Keegan Thomas had a shoulder surgery, so I swapped him out for Cole Somerville, and him and Rory were fantastic. Rory Jarvis all year. I mean, if it wasn't for them too, you know, when you don't have to look back because you just have that much confidence in your outriding horses and your outriders, it makes life a lot easier. And Versatile Energy, I mean, they're part of our family. It's not just about what they do for the wagon. I mean, we go on holidays together. We spend as much time as we can in the off season. It's not just about the racing season, like I said. And I mean, it's a whole team effort. The people back at the barns, and then especially the equine athletes, they really stepped up and made my job easier.
Another first. For 3 or 4 years we have not had a runoff, but for the first time ever, not only are we having a finals at Century Downs in Balzac, we're having a runoff in Dewberry, your hometown.
Yeah, for sure. When I first started racing here, the runoff has been in Dewberry, so now my brother Chance is going into it, and a few other guys, so it should be a good time. I'm unfortunately going to miss it. I'm taking off as soon as I possibly can to go try to regroup and restart stocking up the livestock for again next year.
How important? We didn't need a runoff because sometimes you were even on the phone trying to make sure that all the slots for 36 were filled, but adding a show like Century Downs has to be attractive for an onlooker who says, hey, I should really consider being on that WPCA circuit. Do you think that's a factor?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't take anything for granted at any of the shows. They're all big shows, and we're all happy to go to it. But I mean, the last half of the season, we don't have too many dashes, and I mean, the shows are good shows, like I said, but they're not a lot of hype. So for us to have a show like Century Downs, which is now the second highest paying show for the dash day and the trailer and everything else, you know, it definitely intrigues people a lot more to come, because we not only do we have the best first half, now we have the best last half as well.
How do we take the next step? Do we need some more 5-day shows with dashes in the series leading up to it? What, if you sat on the board, could you suggest would make it that much more attractive? Do we need more media attention?
Well, I mean, all that stuff will help. Anytime we can have a dash. I mean, if I'm for going back to the old school, and if it's you get 3 days and you don't end up getting the one, oh well. And if you make the dash, you do. You know, every time we leave money on the table, it's not going into the driver's pockets, which, you know, and then we don't look after the horses as well or the people. So it's just better off if we have the dash. I think it's more intriguing and more it's better for the people. It may not always be the fairest for the drivers, but it's what the people want to see, and it's what makes everything more entertaining.
Safe travels. best of luck as you try and shore up for the 2020 season, and we'll see you at the banquet.
Thanks, I appreciate it, Arnie.
Kurt Bensmiller, back-to-back, 2 times the world champion and 4 times in his chuck wagon driving career. Chuck wagon racing isn't the only Western sport that we have. There's gymkhanas and high school rodeos. And then, of course, as they get to being adult age, they may join the pro circuits. There's 2 of them, the Professional Rodeo Cowboys Association out of Colorado Springs, and in Airdrie, Alberta, the Canadian Pro Rodeo Association. There's a number of other rodeo associations as well, including high school rodeo. There's the CCA in Saskatchewan. There's the Foothills Cowboys Association. So lots of rodeo action each and every year, except 2020. And yes, that COVID disease that we talked about, COVID-19, has brought a halt to all kinds of recreational gatherings, especially when there's a lot of fan support, a lot of people that would be in close proximity to each other. However, down in the United States, they have actually started to experiment with having some rodeos without any fans. And so the PRCA, the Professional Rodeo Cowboys Association, has been putting on some of their rodeos that were scheduled without fans, but the officials are there, the stock contractors are there, and as many of the cowboys as are allowed to travel are showing up for those rodeos. And then, of course, the excitement of Las Vegas, where the National Finals Rodeo takes place each and every December, and has since 1985, when they moved it from it actually was in Oklahoma City for a number of years, but got moved after the '84 season to Las Vegas, and it's been in Sin City, as they say, ever since. Well, for the last couple of weekends, they've actually had PBR, that's professional bull riders, and there's no timed events and no saddle bronc riding or bareback riding. It's just bull riding that goes on, but 2 very successful weekends. So I'm looking for that door or the gate to swing open a little wider as we get more and more rodeos. But keep in mind, some of the big shows, Houston earlier this year was canceled. Of course, the Calgary Stampede coming up very, very quickly. We're less than a month away from what would be the date for the Calgary Stampede. That will not take place this year. And, of course, Cheyenne Frontier Days that Buddy Bensmiller, we talked a little bit about earlier on the show. He's an 8-time champion at the Chuck Wagon segment there. Well, they have a great, big, very, very rich rodeo for the Cowboys to attend. That will not take place this year. It has also been canceled. So we'll bring you up to date a little bit on the rodeo scene. More Chuck Wagon action as we continue again next week.